Hello and welcome. So today I would like to show you how to book your perfect hostel for your next stay. So probably I'm not the typical backpacker, but still I've stayed at more than 20 hostels all around the world, and I learned what are the most important things you want to pay attention to when choosing your hostel. I really like hostels because first, I'm mostly traveling alone, and hostels are a great place to meet other travelers and make new friends, and also because it's much cheaper to stay at a hostel when traveling alone. So today I would like to talk about the following things. So first, the location of the hostel you are looking for. Second, the rooms the hostel offers, the activities offered at the hostel, other facilities, and finally I would like to give you some more tips that you might want to consider when booking a hostel. So I usually use Booking.com to book my hostel stays, but I'm not paid by Booking.com. It's just because I'm Genius member and I get discounts on some hostels. But you also might want to use Hostelworld, which is another good booking platform. But I would recommend you to use some platform, because if something goes wrong, you still have a place where you can complain. So this gives you some negotiation power. Oh, let's first talk about location. So I would recommend you to choose a hostel at a place where you rather want to stay at night than during daytime, because during daytime you can always take a bus to a place where you want to go. So let me give you an example here. Last year I've stayed in Valencia at a hostel called Urban Youth Hostel. So I basically have picked this hostel in the first place because it was close to the beach. So as you can see, the hostel was located close to the beach, and I thought, yeah, that's great. But actually in the end it was a bad choice, because there was not much going on in this location. Most of the nightlife is happening in the city center, right? And also I found out that there is actually a not much nicer place next to Valencia, and there you had to take a bus, which again departed from Valencia city center. So in the end it was not a good choice to pick a location close to the city beach of Valencia. Another example is I've stayed at Koh Samui in a hostel called Chilean Hostel. It was a really great hostel, but it was very far away from everything, and I didn't have a scooter, so I couldn't even go to the grocery store. So I had to switch the hostel in the end. So I would always recommend you to look at what is in the neighborhood of the hostel. Are all like facilities like supermarkets and restaurants, or is there public transportation, and rather pick a hostel in a place where you want to stay at night. Now let's talk about rooms. So here are some things you might want to consider. So first I would recommend you to choose a room with metal beds. It's just these rooms are usually cleaner and don't provide this many possibilities for bed bugs to hide. So I actually stayed once in a hostel where there have been bed bugs, and it's actually very annoying because it took me like 1 month to get rid of the bed bugs, and probably I will do another video specifically on bed bugs. But yeah, also there are some things that make your stay more pleasant in a room. So these are, for example, curtains next to your bed, also like a power outlet and a shelf above your bed. Most of the dorms have lockers, so I would also recommend you to look for lockers where you can use your own lock, because like this you are sure that you're the only person who has access to the locker. So let me show you an example of a room that I found very well designed. So for example, I've stayed at a hostel in Sadar called Boutique Hostel Forum, and the rooms were just amazing. So let me show you. For example, they provided a curtain, so you had some privacy, you had an own light, you had a power outlet. Also, I would never book the cheapest possible room in a hostel. The bigger the room is, the easier it is to get to know other new people, but then again, a bigger room tends to be more loud, So that's a trade-off. And also look for with rooms that have like proper ventilations or windows you can open. And if you stay at a place where it's warm, look for hostels which offer air conditioning. Once I've stayed at a hostel in Munich, for example, where you couldn't open the window, there was no air conditioning, there was no ventilation, it was just horrible. The whole room smelled like, you don't want to stay in a room where you have the feeling you can't breathe. So the second thing is activities. So most of the hostels provide some kind of activities, and I really like this activities because it's a great opportunity to get to know new people. I would recommend you to check the websites of the hostels for information if they offer some activities. So once, for example, I've stayed at a hostel in New York, the High USA Hostel New York, and when you go to the webpage, you can actually see that they have like an event calendar, and there are many events offered to hostel guests. And if the hostel doesn't provide something like an activity calendar, just write them a message, because many hostels claim that they provide some activities, while in reality they just sell tickets for some pub crawls, let's say. So this is obviously not the same. Also, you might want to make sure the activities the hostel provides are actually ones that you would enjoy. So some hostels, for example, are pure party hostels. So yeah, they are very social, but these are places where you party all the time. So I heard, for example, of a hostel in Bangkok where you were forced to get some shots, for example, for breakfast. So this wouldn't be something for me, for example. But yeah, it depends on the kind of person you are. So another great hostel I've stayed at with many activities was, for example, the Ventana Azul hostel in Las Palmas de Gran Canaria. So there, for example, there was like dinner for everyone at the hostel every night. They also made some tapas nights, for example. Another very social hostel was the Hostel Ole in Alicante, where I stayed. So they actually went out like every night. Now let's talk about other facilities. So what I mean by our facilities is our facilities that are provided at a hostel but not inside the room. So here, for example, you might want to look for a hostel that provides lockers where you can store your baggage after checkout or before checkout. So for example, here in this hostel in Valencia, they offered very big lockers where you could store your luggage after checkout. So for example, then you can check out at 10 a.m. but you still have all day to discover the city. So this is a great option. And my other tip is look for hostels where the bathrooms are located outside the room. So I rather prefer these hostels because rooms in these hostels tend to be quieter, and also there are not so often queues to the bathroom. So if there is only one bathroom per room, you are more likely to wait for other guests. But if you have like showers in the hallway, it's less likely that you have to wait. What you also want to look for are common areas. So for example, the Hostel Orle I've stayed at in Alicante had a big common area. So it was a nice place to like relax, chill out, and like talk to other people. And also, like for example, at the hostel I've recently stayed at in El Medano, they also provided like big common areas. So this was very cool because actually you could like still talk after 11 p.m. and not disturb other guests. So now I would like to give you some tips on how to read reviews. So this might actually be quite tricky. Let's go to a hostel page. Let's, for example, pick this hostel. So what I recommend you to do is, for example, go to the review section and filter the reviews. So we might want to choose solo traveler, because people who travel alone tend to pay attention to different things, like for example activities offered at the hostel, and like couples don't care so much about activities, for example. Also, you might want to check what type of travelers these are, because for example older people tend to prefer like quieter hostels, while younger people tend to prefer like hostels where there is much going on. So read the reviews carefully. So you might also want to use other sources for reading reviews, like for example Hostelworld, just because there are different people using Hostelworld than Booking.com. So let's see, for example, at this hostel I've stayed at in Chiang Mai. So here also you can see the review section, and you can actually, for example, look at the age of the reviewer. So this is also very helpful. So I would say that there are, for example, more people traveling alone using Hostelworld, more backpackers, so they tend to have a different perspective on hostels. Also, when reading reviews, you might want to pay attention who actually writes these reviews. So, for example, as I've said before, I stayed at a urban youth hostel in Valencia, and I found that actually there were not many young people staying at this hostel. So probably if I had read the reviews more carefully, I would know that this is not the best place to go as a single traveler. So yeah, it was very nicely designed, and in general it was a nice hostel, but just a guest. I couldn't make like any friends there, because there were mostly people who just looked for a cheap place to stay, but were not necessarily backpackers or other young people. Now I have some more tips that you want to consider when booking a hostel. First, check the availability of the hostel when booking it. So I heard of a guy, for example, in Thailand who was the only guest at a hostel. It was the rain season, but still it's not very nice to be the only guest at a hostel, because there is not much going on. So for example, using Hostelworld, you can actually see how many beds there are available in each room so this is very helpful. So for example, this room usually offers 6 beds, but there are only 2 beds available, so you know that there are actual people in this hostel at this time. Another tip is, if you know that the hostel is not selling out quickly, don't book the entire trip in advance. Maybe it's better to go to this place and then see, do you really like this hostel, and you might also want to extend the hostel in the end, but don't book the entire trip in advance, except you know that it's selling out quickly. Also, you might encounter a problem that the hostel you would like to stay in at is already fully booked. So I would recommend you to ask at the reception, because maybe you just need to change the room, but actually they have beds available during all your stay. So don't be afraid if it says there are no beds available, just ask. And well, you can also try, for example, to divide your stay into 2 parts and book them separately. So the booking engine will then treat it as 2 reservations, and maybe then you will have like some availabilities. I hope you like this video. Don't forget to share it and subscribe to my channel, and see you next time.